This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are your perpetuation of liberal entitlement.
A perpetuation of progressive talk entitlement. I want
like
to
it
change
better.
it. I like that better.
I like it better. And no skim milk liberals allowed.
Although sometimes I'm admittedly put a little skim milk in my liberalism.
Yeah, there's been a few issues lately where I have to say I
like last week.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. Big show in store for you guys today. Adam Ettinger of Occupy Monsanto, Juliana Forlano of Absurdity Today, and Hal Sparks of the Hal Sparks radio program Worldwide.
Mega Worldwide.
Excuse me.
Do not forget the mega.
That's right. But as usual, we like to start off with a few news stories that you may have missed during the week or that we think need a little bit more attention. And the first one is the reason why
before you get going, can I mention?
Sure.
On our page, during the week, these stories that we do at the very top of the show, I'm kind of putting in those stories, linking to where you can find them.
Some of them.
Yeah, just a few.
They are subject to change.
I just want to. These are the stories that the mainstream media sometimes pick up, usually get wrong, or just aren't picking up at all.
Right. And sometimes,
or they're just, that is really cool.
Yeah. Sometimes moments before the show, we are finding new cool stories and swapping them out. So
right. So those are, so check out the site because those are at the top, and you'll be at our site for about 30 seconds. I'm not doing this to plug our site because you'll see that it just links to other places.
Right. But you could go to talkingleft.com and check it out, where you can subscribe to the podcast, the YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter.
I wasn't plugging the site, and there you go doing it.
And we are in the process of compiling a list of other great progressive talk shows, both independent and some on the radio, some YouTube, some...
Like 150 of them.
Yeah, so it's going to take us a little while to figure it out and finish it, but thanks to Victor Rocco for helping us, and we will get that shortly. So, in the news, apparently I was psychic this morning when I put on my Planned Parenthood t-shirt, because the big story released yesterday evening was that an Arkansas district judge, Susan Weber Wright, has put a stay on the 12-week abortion ban in that state. The Republican lawmakers pushed through this bill, even overriding a veto by Democratic Governor Mike Beebe, and essentially were pretty much banning abortion because saying that any abortion after 12 weeks was illegal in the state.
At first they did 20, and they kept going. At some point, they're going to get, minutes after. Seconds after.
Exactly. So this put an undue hardship on women because oftentimes women don't know they're pregnant until about 12 weeks. So that leaves a very limited time period to have an abortion if that was their choice. But a judge in Arkansas has put a stay on that ruling, on that legislation, while she decides whether or not to rule this law unconstitutional or kick it up to a higher court.
Right. The thing is that these laws, and no, this is not a big surprise to anybody. This is not news. This is not new analysis. But at some point, and I think they've gone way past it, you have effectively outlawed a legal procedure.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the way they're doing it. They chip away until there's nothing left.
Right.
And at some point, the Supreme Court has to step in and say, knock it off.
And I think some of these abortion groups are hoping to get this case before the current Supreme Court because of its tendency to lean very right.
I think they want it the next Supreme Court where perhaps one or two of the liberal justices may have to be replaced.
Right.
If they retire.
And even Obama's replacements have not been as categorically liberal as earlier judges.
They've been markedly less liberal.
Right.
Because they can't get confirmed by our crazy Senate.
Right. And we're going to actually talk about that a little later in the show relating to the NLRB. But this is just such great news. I mean, all of these laws should be struck down. They are a clear violation of the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision. But at least in the meantime, this is a temporary measure to prevent this law from being enforced. And hopefully it allows both the pro-choice movement to gain some steam, some more support in that state, and it allows women who need this procedure, whether it be for personal reasons or medical reasons, to...
You don't need a reason if it's legal.
Right. I agree. But cheers to Judge Susan Weber Wright, and hopefully she decides that the law is invalid, and let them appeal. Hopefully one of these courts will strike this down and say it's a violation of the Roe v. Wade decision. So it's a step in the right process.
Or perhaps we can revisit Roe v. Wade.
And strengthen it.
Yes, and make it a more reasonable legal precedent.
Right.
Because just recently it was Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg who said the way we went about that is probably why these attacks are possible. So, although I have to say I don't have a whole lot of faith in our current Supreme Court. So
I don't either.
That's the thing. Like, do we really want it to go there and then end up with something that's less strong? But it's a quandary.
It is.
It's a difficult one.
It is, but we have to keep up the fight. And little victories like this, where one judge standing on the right side of this issue, the correct side of this issue, hopefully gives the movement a little more hope and a little more steam that there are people who are willing to stand up for women's rights in these, judgeships. So, just celebrate the small victory in the meantime and don't give up fighting. Meanwhile, in Texas, another judge, I just have to shake my head at this. A Texas judge has forbidden a lesbian woman from living with her partner. According to...
I saw this story. This is incredible.
Carolyn Compton has been in a 3-year relationship with her partner, and her ex-husband rarely sees the children. He's been charged with stalking Carolyn. So it doesn't sound like the world's greatest guy to begin with. But thanks to a morality clause in her divorce contract, it forbids Compton from having a person she is not related to by blood or marriage in the home past 9 p.m. when her children are present. Since Texas law prohibits her from marrying her partner, she is now faced with the choice of either living separately or losing custody of her children.
Wow.
Yeah.
An effect of same-sex marriage. That's one of those things you don't even think about.
Right.
We talk about visiting people in hospitals or rights to inherit or all those types of things, but that's a very real thing that probably happens a lot more often.
Yeah. All I can think is, where are the so-called family values in this? How is breaking up a mother and her children family values so that her stalker ex-husband can be protected from her living with her new lesbian partner?
Right. And the idea of a morality clause
in a divorce contract?
And on top of it, it just disgusts me in that this would be considered... I can just imagine a Texas judge saying, yeah, that's immoral. It just gives more credence to the...
Exactly. And now she does have the right to appeal the decision, but if she does, it will be heard. It's just going to go further into the notoriously conservative Texas court system. So, she could be fighting this for a decade, trying to get a case like this before the Supreme Court, or
having to move and uproot the family.
Or having to...
And then you have the situation, if they have joint custody, can you move the child?
Right. And how about the kids have probably lived with this partner, this woman, for years, and that's part of their stable family life.
As is schools, etc., friends.
Right. So good job to that Texas judge for breaking up a family. All in effort to provide a stalker with a morality clause. Good job. In other news this week, U.S. retailers will not stand up to slave labor, and this is really frustrating. There's been so many fires, building collapses, really deadly events in Bangladesh and several other parts of the world in which really low-paid workers have died because of unsafe working conditions. And in response to that, specifically after this huge Bangladesh factory collapse that killed over 1,100 people, major retailers, specifically 6 major European retailers, have said they're going to sign a safety agreement, a legally binding document that will encourage them to spend money on fire safety and building safety, as well as comply to stricter safety standards and give workers a voice at the negotiating table. Well, U.S. retailers say they will not sign this document. They will not agree to this plan. Specifically, Gap and Walmart have announced that they will not sign on. Gap has expressed concerns that overzealous American lawyers could seize on the agreement to sue American companies on behalf of aggrieved factory workers, which is nonsense.
It is absolute nonsense. Essentially what it comes down to is they're saying that the lawyers could take this agreement as some kind of admission that they weren't doing enough ahead of time. And that seems logical. Doesn't it seem logical that, that would be evidence? See, you messed up before, and here we have the proof.
It seems logical.
But there's an evidence law. It's in all of the evidence from federal all the way down that that remedial steps taken after an accident can't be used in court because they want to encourage people to do that. Let's say, for example, you owned a hotel and you had a railing that was kind of broken, and one of your guests fell because of this. They sue you, but in the meantime, you say, this railing really is broken. I need to fix it so that no one else gets hurt. The attorney for the person who got hurt can't use the evidence of you fixing the railing, and the reason is the courts say, if you have something that's unsafe, it's going to hurt somebody again. We don't want to discourage you from doing that. We'd like you to fix that, so we're not going to hold that against you in a court of law. So
Gap is essentially using legal terminology, legal lingo to excuse themselves from what seems like a really beneficial plan for workers. And Walmart, of course, basically says that these decisions, these governance and dispute resolution mechanisms should be left up to retailers, suppliers, and government, and they shouldn't get involved. They're instead implementing their own voluntary plan, which they've had all along and hasn't prevented a darn thing. Trust us. It's not like we've abused workers all over the country, including here, all over the world, including U.S. It's disgusting. It really is, and I am not for boycotts, but I really think we need to vote with our dollars here.
Yes, the building is not on fire, by the way, just in case anyone's wondering. Yes. There's obviously something going on in the neighborhood, but
yes.
I'm like,
yes, it does sound like they are coming to get us.
Yeah.
Yeah. In great news, Harry Reid says he's going to possibly go after filibuster reform again.
Oh, come on. I have to say, I'm glad to hear, but it's just talk again. Do something. Stop talking about it. Do something.
I agree. I'm very hesitant to get excited about this because of how many times he's let us down in the past. But he says that...
Let's back up a second. I don't think it's just him. He's got to get a certain number of votes.
Right.
So I apologize. Democrats in the Senate, do something. Now, they're all worried that the next time around, I think it should just be done for appointments, quite honestly.
That's
we talked
exactly...
about that at the beginning of the year when they were coming back in, because when it comes right down to it, the House can still stop legislation. But the House is not involved in confirmations. Advice and consent is just in the Senate.
That's exactly what he's doing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Great news.
Yeah. He wants to remove the nuclear option from, he wants to reform filibuster and say that the nuclear option is not eligible for nominations. And he specifically says that if Senate Republicans block upcoming nominations, that he will, in July, approach filibuster reform and remove the ability to block nominations, leave them only to be subject to majority votes.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I just hope he actually does it.
Because there's still the committee process. There are multiple. It's not that there won't be advice on these nominees.
Right.
And that even means when the Senate flips, inevitably that it will at some point. We don't know when. There is still the ability to look into someone's record to make sure that they are a good nominee, to have that advice, to get that consent. It just doesn't need the supermajority consent. I think it's a great idea.
I think it is, too. I really hope that he goes for this. And I got to say, I don't like this. If the Senate block 3 more upcoming nominations, then he's going to go for this. They've already blocked enough.
Seriously.
It's like,
I'm going to count to 3.
Right. It's like, if you punch me in the face one more time,
2,
I might call the cops. Okay,
3.
2 more times. Okay, 3 more times. No. They've already shown that they're unwilling to work with Democrats. They've already shown that they will block every nomination that the president has. Why give them another opportunity? Just reform the filibuster.
Yeah, and don't worry about it. They'll do it 3 more times. They'll do it 3 more times before this show's over.
Yeah, seriously.
Come on.
And in some frustrating news, Shane, that you sent me this morning.
Oh, yeah.
We have all talked about Keystone and the toxic tar sands oil that they're trying to pump through our country. Well, it turns out that the city of Detroit is being hit with a byproduct of this tar sands oil that many of us may not have heard of. It's called petroleum coke. And ironically, it is owned at least...
Is it spelled K-O-C-H?
It is spelled C-O-K-E, like the drink. But the company that is doing this is controlled by Charles and David Koch.
Wow.
K-O-C-H.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's a high-sulfur, high-carbon waste. It's a byproduct of producing tar sands oil, refining tar sands oil. And it is being exported to other countries where they burn it as fuel. However, just to realize how bad this is, Lorne Stockman published a study on this stuff for the Oil Change International Group. So sounds like an oil-friendly lobby. Don't know for a fact, but Oil Change International. He says it's the dirtiest residue from the dirtiest oil on Earth. And it is so bad that the EPA doesn't even allow this stuff to be burned in the U.S. But we're exporting it to other countries for them to do it.
Right, but aren't they putting it now in Detroit?
They're just stockpiling it.
They're just dumping it.
Yes.
And if you look at the picture of it,
it looks like a mountain.
It's in the New York Times. This is by the New York Times.
Yes.
It looks like...
a mountain.
Yes, a mountain of black sludge.
Right. But it's actually a more powdery substance.
So my question also is, because you can't tell from it, is it sticky, or if the wind blows, does this stuff blow everywhere?
That's what I'm wondering, because this is piled right next to the Detroit River.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So
what could possibly go wrong?
Even if it's sticky, what could possibly go wrong there?
And what's their city manager going to do about this?
I would suspect absolutely nothing.
Probably expand it. That's a good way to make money.
Right. So this is just another serious reason why, this whole emergency financial manager law in Detroit is really dangerous, because now the people don't have a voice. Even the city legislatures don't have a way to stop this.
And they're not accountable. It's not like we're going to vote you out of office.
Right. What
if you
can
turn
do?
our place into a dump.
We thought that law was going to break up Detroit and sell it off in pieces. Instead, they're breaking up Detroit and letting pieces of it to be used as a dump for toxic waste.
Well, we don't know that there was a city manager that put this dump into place.
No, but whatever the case may be, it needs to get cleaned up.
Where does it go? This reminds me of the same situation when it comes to nuclear.
Yeah, the Michigan...
Not in my backyard.
The Michigan branch of the EPA is calling on... I love this. Calling on the company to consider different storage options.
Oh, yeah.
How nice.
Let's just think about that.
Can you move it somewhere else, please?
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, EPA, you're being rendered impotent by, Congress because you don't have a head, and we want to take you to the Supreme Court, so you can't even regulate this stuff as carbon.
Right. So it's just another
and the Clean
reason.
Water Act, and oh my God.
It's just another reason why we need to keep pursuing this anti-Keystone XL push, and why we need to be breaking up these big companies and standing up as a unified population against these type of actions. The only way we can defeat this is together, and that's why we need to stick together. We're going to be speaking with Adam Ettinger of Occupy Monsanto a little later about that very same idea and how they're trying to fight the agriculture giant Monsanto. Lots more in store today, so don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thanks for listening, and we'll be right back with more.
What kind of a crazy world is this?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Okay, astronaut, you're up. You'll be meeting with Wish Kid Brandon.
Roger, Brandon.
His wish is to see a space shuttle launch.
All systems are go. We are clear for liftoff.
This year, more than 27,000 children will be diagnosed with a life-threatening medical condition.
And Cowboy,
Yes, ma'am.
you'll be meeting with Shayla at a dude ranch in San Antonio.
Let's saddle up.
Some will miss school, some will miss time with their family and friends.
Princess, are you here?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for rescuing me from that evil witch.
Juliana wishes for a princess-themed room makeover.
That sounds magical.
But with your help, the Make-A-Wish Foundation can lift their spirits and give them a special kind of hope.
Pirate,
Yar!
you're up for Isaac's wish.
Aye, aye, Captain.
The wishes of thousands of children are waiting to come true.
You can help make my wish happen. Visit wish.org today.
My name is Joe Thompson. I'm 29 years old and I have a career that I love as a systems analyst. Career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on this path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without Big Brothers Big Sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil. And Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child. And that can last a lifetime. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Brad Friedman, your friendly citizen investigative blogger, journalist, troublemaker, muckraker, and all-around swell fellow from bradblog.com. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. 1 hour of troublemaking and muckraking ripped from the pages of bradblog.com and sometimes from the dark recesses of my mind. We'll have investigative interviews with newsmakers, we'll call out the liars, frauds, and phonies, and we'll even give kudos to the good guys if we can find any. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. We'll report on politics, elections, election reform, mainstream corporate media failure, media reform, global warming denialism, and everything before, during, and after. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday, now a full hour, 3 to 4 p.m., right here on Pacifica Radio's KPFK and coast to coast and around the globe on kpfk.org.
Hank Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. In just a few minutes, we're going to be speaking with Adam Ettinger of Occupy Monsanto. And the big news this week about Monsanto was the Supreme Court siding with them in a case about soybeans.
Yeah, the David versus Goliath, although the ending was a little different.
Yes.
Goliath pretty much just smushed David with the bottom of his foot in front of the Supreme Court.
Yes. The case was from a soybean farmer who essentially acquired Monsanto seeds, planted them. It was kind of by accident at first, but then he subsequently planted them afterwards.
He purchased them through a Monsanto distributor for his first planting of the season. Later in the season, he was using second-generation seeds. In other words, Monsanto seeds had been planted somewhere else. They grew, and the seeds that were produced were put in a silo, and he bought them from that silo.
Right.
So it was a replication that happened naturally in nature when soybeans are grown. And Monsanto jumps all over farmers for this.
Yes.
And the question was whether or not that was a violation of their patent agreement. And the Supreme Court said, yeah.
Yeah. Justice Elena Kagan ruled in a 10-page opinion, very short for this court, said if simple copying by, the seeds being copies, were a protected use, meaning a valid use for infringing upon a patent, a patent would plummet in value after the first sale of the first item containing the invention. It's essentially that they created the seed is self-replicating.
You can use the seed for whatever you want. You can plant it. You can use it as feed. You can sell it to someone else, but you can't make a copy of it.
Right. And the question here was the seeds grow themselves from the plants that you planted. So should that second-generation seed be subject to the same patent?
Because that would be a normal use for a seed, to grow one and make more seeds. So he was saying this, we're allowed to use the patented item when we buy it legally however we want. This is one of the ones that happens in nature. Yeah. What's the deal?
But Monsanto won. The court sided with them, saying that to change this ruling would violate the patent and, quote, result in less incentive for innovation than Congress wanted. I'm so sick of that term. Incentive for innovation. I mean, we hear that for tax cuts or similar, worded talking points. Yeah. They need tax cuts so that they have incentive to create jobs. They need patent protections to incentive to innovate, blah, blah.
But the good news in this decision, while it was 9-0, the very last paragraph goes to great lengths to say, this is narrow. It only applies to this case. Don't apply it to other cases because we may rule otherwise in self-replicating technologies. And actually, when I was coming up in the elevator before this segment, I was thinking to myself, well, what would that be? What about the example if you take the Monsanto seed and you use it to create yet a different seed? Think about that.
Well, it just scares me that the next thing Monsanto's going to come out with are these plants that have no seeds.
Right. So that you can't copy them.
Right.
Yeah. You can't pirate their seeds. Yeah, well, we should talk about that with our guest coming up. So
I think we will. We're going to be speaking with Adam Ettinger of Occupy Monsanto. You can check it out at occupy-monsanto.com. He's going to tell us all about an upcoming March on Monsanto that's happening worldwide. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we'll be right back.
And I just want to say, I think that was the most brilliant performance ever in the history of everything.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Little Eric Cantor, the prancing political prissy who serves as the GOP's House Majority Leader, apparently thinks he's too slick to get caught in an outright legislative lie. Or maybe he thinks we rubes are too dumb to figure out that he's trying to slick us. Either way, a crude deceit is at the very heart of his Working Families Flexibility Act, which he recently slid through the House. It eliminates a central piece of America's middle-class framework, namely the 8-hour workday and 40-hour week. Under the 1938 Fair Labor Law, bosses can make hourly employees work extra, but only by paying an overtime wage for the added hours. Cantor claims his bill would improve this New Deal protection by letting corporate managers require extra hours on the job without overtime pay by offering comp time to the employees. In other words, work more hours now in exchange for taking off those same number of hours later on. With a wink at corporate lobbyists, Eric slyly refers to this switch as women-friendly, allowing working moms the flexibility to decide when to take time off. Therein lies the lie. It's not workers who get to decide, but bosses. Note that Cantor's bill does not guarantee employees the right to use the time off they would earn by giving up extra pay. They can use the comp time only if and when the employer says it's okay, which might be never. Also, even if employees are granted time off, bosses can require them to be on call during their free time. This is Jim Hightower saying Cantor's bill is a con. It hands workplace flexibility to corporations, not to moms, while also stealing the hard-won right of workers to be assured of an 8-hour day or extra pay. For more information, contact National Partnership for Women and Families at nationalpartnership.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, the Workers' Independent News Service. I'm Jesse Russell. 5 University of California medical centers could be impacted by a 2-day strike next week. Last week, 13,000 technical workers for the centers voted overwhelmingly in favor of giving the AFSCME bargaining committee the authority to call a strike. According to the union, negotiations have reached a stalemate over unsafe working conditions, including staffing ratios. The university has said that the main issue hanging up negotiations is reforming the $24 billion unfunded pension liability. The union has countered that the university continues to provide executives with high salaries and pensions while asking for the workers to sacrifice and accept economic concessions. The union has released a study that shows an increase to executive payroll of $100 million since 2009. According to the union, the cuts to staffing impacts patient safety as it means less training for technicians and increased stress on employees. If the strike moves forward, the university could see staff walking the picket lines at all 5 medical centers and at student health centers at all 10 campuses across the state.
The United Mine Workers of America is fighting hard against an effort by Peabody Coal to destroy pension and health care for retired miners and their families. UMWA says Peabody spun off a company called Patriot Coal and set that up to fail, so bankruptcy could be filed, allowing the company to shed $1.6 billion in promised pension and health care benefits for retired miners. UMWA President Cecil Roberts.
This may be legally correct. It's morally corrupt, and we're going to find out if the United States government, state governments, the court systems, I believe it's all right for corporations to be morally corrupt and to do their workers and their retirees and their widows like this.
Taken from a UMWA video, here are union miners, relatives, and UMWA leaders talking about the fight for fairness at Patriot Coal.
These men worked, and my husband worked, so that you could have a company and you can make your millions of dollars. Why just discard them and throw them away? And that's exactly what you're doing. It's like you're opening up a trash can and dumping them in the trash. And I can't see you doing people like that.
And just to take me and put me over here and then put my benefits in jeopardy. It's no good.
Until I die, I will fight. I'll do anything this union asks me to do. State might end up having to pay for my medical coverage if I end up in jail, but if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
We got some fighters in this union, and I think they're going to fight it, and I think we're going to win it.
You've been listening to WIN, the Workers' Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Joining us now is Adam Eidinger, spokesperson for Occupy Monsanto. There is a huge march worldwide coming up on May 25th, and he is going to tell us all about it. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, we're really excited to talk to you. This is an issue we have spoken about at length on this show, and it's great to see this huge movement coming together to do something about it. Tell us a little bit about Occupy Monsanto.
Well, first of all, I hope we don't overestimate the crowd numbers. That would be terrible if people expected, tens of thousands of people and only 1,000 people show up. So let's not exaggerate the size of these protests. But it is true that in the last 2.5 years, there's been a resurgence in GMO, anti-GMO, that's genetically engineered foods activism. And whether you like it or not, chances are you've eaten food contaminated by Monsanto, food that is genetically engineered to withstand higher doses of weed killer chemicals that are predominantly made from petrochemicals, which we know are linked to cancer. There's plenty of evidence of that. And this is what's going on in our food.
Yeah.
This is industrial agriculture in the name of profit and having the cheapest food possible, and the food is not worth the price you're paying for it. It is unhealthy food, and we want organic, locally produced food. We want to encourage small-scale farming that will create middle-class jobs. We don't need a CEO who's paid over $12 million a year to be in charge of our food. That is not how America envisions its food system. This is about our preference. And when people talk about, oh, the science shows that it's perfectly safe, no long-term studies have been done on humans. And every long-term study that's been done on animals has showed terrible consequences. So this is a really urgent issue. And if we can win on this issue, we can beat back corporations where it matters.
Yes.
This is take back our food.
Absolutely. And I want to let people know that if they go to these events, and as you said, there might not be a huge presence at the event that you're specifically at, but if you go to OccupyMonsanto.com, Occupy-Monsanto.com, I'm amazed at how many individual groups have popped up around the world. This isn't just an issue that we're fighting here in the U.S. Even in countries that have banned GMOs, it looks like there's a big support for this movement. Am I looking at that correctly, Adam?
You're absolutely correct. This is a popular movement that transcends left and right and in the middle, too. There are people from all walks of life that are concerned about this issue. I think you really have about 90% of the public that agrees with us that at the very least, genetically engineered foods should be labeled in the marketplace so that at least the marketplace can function properly. When you don't label a key ingredient in a product, you are, first of all, opening up people to allergy problems, and they won't know what's causing it. And there are a lot of people who believe that they are getting horrible allergies, food allergies, as a result of eating, genetically engineered soy, genetically engineered corn, and et cetera, sugar beets. I mean, it's for most people, their main diet, other than meat, are these GMO crops.
Yeah.
And fortunately, GMO wheat has not been introduced yet into the United States diet. We are still eating a lot of healthy food in this country. We are the breadbasket to the world. We shouldn't trash our breadbasket with chemicals. And what we've done for really since World War II in a widespread way is we've been pouring weed killer on things, and what happens is the weeds get resistance, and over time the weed killer doesn't work anymore, and they have to come up with greater, stronger weed killer. And right now, the Obama administration is considering allowing 2,4-D, the main ingredient in Agent Orange. All of our Vietnam veterans remember this horrible chemical that caused birth defects to their children in this country and in Vietnam. And we're going to spray this on all the food because we want to make farmers a little bit more money because they want to figure out how to have less labor on the farm. These are all about labor-saving efforts. When we have high unemployment in this country, maybe we do need to encourage people to go back to farming, who live in urban areas that are unemployed. Or maybe they should be growing the food in their own areas and not giving Monsanto their hard-earned paycheck. This is a revolt is what's going on here. And all you have to do is change the food you buy.
Yeah, I mean...
To win. That's the main thing. It's like it's about everyday choices people make about, am I going to eat fast food or am I going to eat crap, or am I going to eat good food,
Yeah, I mean, and you brought up an important point, too. You actually brought up two that I wanted to touch on, and you said it so eloquently. This is also, in addition to food safety and knowing where our food comes from, this is also a jobs issue. This is also a cost issue, and there's so much misconception out there that if we were to ban GMOs, that the prices to consumers would just skyrocket. And everything that I've read from independent research shows that that's not exactly correct. Do you have any comment on that talking point that's often used by the pro-GMO crowd?
They are fear-mongering. They're going around the world saying that we're all going to starve to death if we don't grow food with chemicals. And it's so false. I really recommend people who are new to this issue to read Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. And in there, it talks about people who eat meat, but also where it comes from and what the animals are fed, and basically makes the case by visiting a farmer named Joel Salatin that a small farm, maybe under 400 acres, which includes forest as part of the ecosystem of the farm, and has a wide variety of animals and crops growing at the same time, is by far the most productive farm you can have. And these farms are usually run by less than 10 people.
Wow.
Like a family or two families. And these farms exist in the United States, and per acre, they are by far the most productive when you look at calories, when you look at actual food. And monocropping, one crop, is good for a machine. It's good for factory farming. It's good for a tractor that is $150,000 tractor. It's good for a farmer who has thousands and thousands of acres and needs to farm it all by himself. But that's not what they have in Europe. They have mostly, the average size farm is 120 acres.
Wow.
That's considered a hobby farm in the United States. It's not even like a real farm.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that Europe had such small farms. I know that we've seen a stronger movement to get GMOs out of the food supply in other parts of the world. Are they? It appears so, according to all the Facebook links on on Occupy Monsanto. But are those groups that have already outlawed this really helping to push this movement forward and to show that it's possible to feed people without GMOs?
I think the elites worldwide that are tied into Wall Street and into all the investment banking world are heavily invested in proprietary ownership of food. They want to patent it. They want to own it. They want to capitalize. They want to create it like make it into a capital item that can be bought and sold. That's beyond just the value of the food, intrinsic value of the food, but actually like the patent rights. They want to. We own the rights to corn. Like they want to value it from that perspective. And so I think there are elites in Europe and elites here that want GMO crops, and they see dollar signs. That's all they see. When you look at the grassroots in Europe, though, and you look at the mainstream there, they have rejected GMOs thoroughly. And any regular European, maybe 4-to-1, is going to tell you they don't want GMOs in their food. I don't want them in their food. They don't even want to. They already have labeling there. They already require transparency in the marketplace, and the people have voted with their dollars. And so all the food companies have said, look, people want natural food. They don't want this stuff that's got genes in it that have been spliced in from other organisms, which we don't know are going to do what to the nature or to ourselves from eating. And because it's never been studied in the long term. This is like a major change to our diets after 10,000 years of eating, having agriculture in our diet, and that we're growing our own food, and suddenly we're just going to get rid of all these traditional foods and replace them with something just because it can resist a chemical.
Yeah.
And it's nuts. And we look at the data. This country is getting less healthy.
Yeah.
Now, what's causing that? And maybe it's TV, maybe it's the internet, but it also could be just as simply what's the food you put in your mouth? It's like. Anyway, we're really upset. We're telling people to bring shopping carts because we're shopping for truth. We're shopping for justice. We want GMO labeling immediately. It is ridiculous that there hasn't been a rule promulgated by the FDA already. President Obama promised to bring us GMO labeling as a candidate as far back as 2007. Speaking to farmers in Iowa, he said this. Farmers today will do it. They will segregate these crops from GMO. They'll keep the GMOs separate. And it will take investment, to be honest, to transition our agricultural system away from these crops. In the short term, it may be more expensive for farmers because they're going to have to be careful not to mix GMO crops with everything else. Right now, there's a segregation between organic crops and GMO crops. So if you buy organic, it's separate from GMOs, and ostensibly there are no GMOs in the organic food. But there is trace contamination now. It's less than 1%, but it is occurring, especially in problematic crops like corn and soy. So really, if we don't rein this in, we won't have organic.
Right.
And that's another reason why we're taking to the streets. Is like this is going to ruin the entire food supply forever.
Yeah.
And so it's time to transition. I don't know. I'll let you get a question in. I'm on a rant this morning.
No problem. That's why we like to speak with people like you who are passionate about the issues. Just tell us a little bit about this march coming up. I know you just said to bring shopping baskets. 5/25, May 25th, 2 p.m., everywhere throughout the world. What can people do to get involved? How can they follow along? I see there's a hashtag #NoGMO that people can use on Twitter, and there's the website Occupy-Monsanto. How else can people take part in this movement?
Well, I want people to realize we're not going to win after one March. We have to keep doing this. This is about changing your habits on a day-to-day basis. So I urge people to immediately think about what they buy and whether it has GMOs in it, and if it does, make the hard decision and just boycott those products. And when it comes to getting out to the streets, we have a list on our website, occupy-monsanto.com, of every publicly announced action. Now, in the past, Occupy Monsanto has called for worldwide protests. We called for one last September 17th, the first-year anniversary of the Occupy movement. About 65 cities worldwide participated. This is close to 300 now, from what I'm seeing, and these are all these were mainly called without we joined late to the game. Like Occupy Monsanto, the website, joined late. There's a separate Occupy Monsanto Facebook, which has been apparently hacked. It's like there's a lot going on with that right now, a lot of drama. I'm not going to get into it right now, but there are multiple Occupy Monsanto presences on Twitter that are different. This is a decentralized movement. It's not really about the personalities of the people who are organizing these protests, but it's more about the issue, and we want results. And so right now it looks like we have momentum. I do expect, it's like 1,200 people who've RSVP'd to go to the White House. I think there's going to be a really nice turnout, and we really want to be heard. We want to be peaceful. We don't have to be violent. We are drawing so much attention and putting so much pressure on these food companies right now that they're actually in Washington right now talking about labeling, but they want to do it their way.
Yep. Well, Adam, I commend you and everybody working with the Occupy Monsanto movement for the grassroots, hardcore working on this issue all the time and standing up to big companies like Monsanto. Thank you very much for all you do. We're going to post the links to Occupy Monsanto and all those different Facebook groups that keep popping up on our website with this show. So just thank you, and we encourage everybody to get out May 25th and support the Occupy Monsanto movement. We really appreciate you joining us today, Adam.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Good luck with the protests. Adam Eidinger, I sincerely apologize. I've probably mispronounced his name 3 times, but the important part is Occupy Monsanto, occupy-monsanto.com. Follow along on Twitter at #NoGMO. And hey, if there's not a group in your area, start one. It only takes a few minutes to start a Facebook group, and other people will be happy and join you. So you're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we will be right back with more, so stick around.
It reflects the drama of the human experience, and isn't that the essence of art?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
This is Kimon Freeman, host of Speak Easy and co-founder of We Act Radio. Suicide is a very serious problem in today's challenging world, whether with our troops abroad or with everyday citizens within our own society. Before you take your life into your own hands, tie a knot at the end of your rope and call the suicide hotline toll-free at 1-855-320-LIFE. That's 1-855-320-LIFE. It may just be the most important call you ever make. You talk, we listen, and together we survive.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Hi, I'm Tom Morello. Some call me the Night Watchman. In the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal's at a crucial stage, please go to freemumia.com to find out more information about how you can help Mumia Abu-Jamal and other political prisoners. Night Watchman out.
Would you like to secure stable employment, affordable, high-quality child care, or an opportunity to serve your community through meaningful volunteer and internship experiences? If so, UPO is the place for you. Hello, I'm Andrea Thomas, Vice President of Administration and Chief of Staff for UPO. As the Community Action Agency for Washington, D.C., UPO has proudly served the residents of Washington for the past 50 years. Annually, we impact the lives of nearly 100,000 Washingtonians, 100,000 people advancing their education, securing employment, maintaining housing stability, and investing in their communities through volunteerism. Our vision is a Washington of thriving communities and self-sufficient residents. To learn more about our services and how you can partner with us or donate, visit us at www.upo.org. UPO, where we are uniting people with opportunities.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster, your host of Take Action News. On our show, we talk government, politics, and what you can do to have an impact. We're nonpartisan, report like hell, and let the chips fall where they may. We feature segments like social media, activists of the week, and the latest news affecting our communities. So join us every Saturday and make a difference. Yes, you and I, we can do this. That's Take Action News on the air, online, and at your podcast convenience on iTunes each week on the We Act Radio Network.
The most important online radio station.
It's easier than ever to listen to SoFlo. On the air and everywhere. On any computer, any mobile device, iPhone, iTouch, and anywhere you are, just hit SoFloRadio.com. Tell your friends about South Florida's radio network, SoFloRadio.com.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left. Thank you again to Adam Eidinger of Occupy Monsanto. He is passionate. He is fired up, and it makes you excited about this march, May 25th. I just want to remind everybody, there are so many groups, and you can check it out at Occupy-Monsanto. Great guy, really passionate, don't you think, Shane?
Yeah, and also he made a great point, a really great point about the relationship between herbicides or pesticides and labor. I hadn't thought of it in those terms. You know, the Supreme Court was all over this, saying this is such a great thing. Now, Occupy Monsanto is looking in terms of the health effects, but there's a real effect on our economy.
Yeah.
That the only reason you use these chemicals is to cut down on your labor overhead.
Right, and let's face it, a lot of these big agricultural companies are already cutting down on their labor overhead by using undocumented immigrants.
Right.
So now they're cutting down further by having to use less.
The thing is though that it costs a little bit more money because you're not using an herbicide to create an organic product. But there's the health benefits to that. Everyone, I think most, if not all of our audience would agree, that's a good thing. But on top of it, to cultivate, to farm an organic good takes more labor.
Yes.
And that's a job. And in a high unemployment situation, that's a good thing.
I think so too. And everybody focuses on the cost of the food, which, I'm sorry, at the rate we subsidize these types of companies, we can subsidize it to make the cost negligible to low-income people.
Why don't we subsidize on the cost side, not on the profit side?
Right, but there's also the societal cost is lower. The health benefits are greater, so it's less damaging.
Costs.
Right, and this really could change unemployment.
And you have more people working, and therefore more people paying into the tax structure.
Right.
For the commons, because the lands are the commons.
Yes.
This was written about hundreds of years ago by Jefferson to Madison.
And those guys were pretty smart.
Or even if you're a Tea Partier, these are the guys who you always go to.
Yeah.
In terms of, this is where we take our marching orders.
But what did they say?
This was Jefferson saying, another means of silently lessening the inequality of property is to exempt all from taxation below a certain point. So this is the tax part, but and then he goes on to say, the earth is given as a common stock to man for man to labor and live on. If, for the encouragement of industry, we allow it to be appropriated, we must take care that other employment be furnished to those excluded from its apportionment. So if we do not, the fundamental right of labor of the earth returns to the unemployed. So in other words, return the land to people who are unemployed if they don't have a job, because we have uncultivated land.
Let them farm it.
Or in the case of this, we have industrialized cultivation that's meant to cut people out of the process, put them back in the process.
Right.
If you need weeds pulled, have people do it.
Right. Instead of using toxic chemicals.
Just seems to make sense to me.
It at a time when people are struggling to find work. I'm so sick of this argument that these are jobs that Americans won't do. I know for a fact that is not true, because we have friends that have taken to, working in agriculture, people who have PhDs, for goodness sake.
Right.
This is a nonsense talking point, and I know for a fact it's not true. People will take those jobs if they need those jobs. And the fact is, if they were being paid a living wage, lots of people would take those jobs.
You better believe it.
Lots of them.
You better believe
And
it.
guess what? If you have good organic food, you can charge a little bit more and pay people a living wage. And if the government's going to subsidize anything, I'd rather avoid tax breaks to companies like Monsanto and big oil companies and big, industrial companies and give them to organic farmers to make the price of organic food sustainable.
It's just a different framework in terms of what the priorities are.
Right.
We have a Supreme Court whose priority is incentivizing big business. Perhaps we should be incentivizing health and employment.
Yes. I think it's a win-win. So it's just another reason to support this group, Occupy Monsanto. And it's proof that this Occupy movement is not dead. People keep saying that. It's not true. They are just smart enough to work in multiple ways and show that they can walk and chew gum at the same
It's
time.
because corporate media is not a big fan of Occupy.
Doesn't mean they don't exist.
Yeah, they just don't want to cover it.
Right.
Come on. How many anti-Iraq war protests did they not cover?
Yes.
If they don't like it, they don't cover it.
Yes, and when their ads are Monsanto,
right.
They're not
Exactly.
going to cover Occupy Monsanto, but
Right.
we will.
Right.
We are not beholden to those big companies. So thank you again to Adam. The march is May 25th, 2 p.m. everywhere, and he said he encourages people to bring shopping carts to show that, you're shopping for a better food supply.
Shopping for the truth.
I think that's going to be some great images, and hopefully we'll get some pictures and we'll post them at TalkingLeft.com. We still have a great show in store for you today. Juliana Forlano of Absurdity Today and Hal Sparks. We're going to be speaking with them a little later. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle Anshano, and we'll be right back.